Okay, very happy to just be here and look a little bit more inside of small countries. And sometimes it's called micro countries, like Nicolai told. Question was at small challenges as well. I can answer different challenges, but we will just a little bit discuss those topics. So, as Martin also told, that Estonia is considered to be also a small country, but when we are working with small islands and much smaller countries, we are facing with pretty different challenges. Just to have a list where our academy has been working, and then we have a region, we have countries like Faroe Islands or Jersey. Jersey is some small country between France and Great Britain. Also Cape Verde, pretty innovative and fancy in technologies. Then some regions like Caribbean region or Pacific or Indian Ocean. And when we are just working with roadmaps, we are having a lot of questions quite often. And then we are looking some competencies from those countries who have done many things. So that's why we're just very happy that Nicolai from Faroe Islands was coming and a little bit telling what have been the challenges and what's the motivation for a small country to be like technology user in e-government. And then from other side, Arne was working with us in the 6 road concepts and actually behind of those big frameworks and architectures, seeing their technology possibilities for those implementations. So I just listed only very fastly something, but we were just looking from different projects. Of course, in small countries, what we see, it's much more centralized, and databases and information systems are much smaller. Sometimes the services are very small list of services, or maybe only 5 companies per year are started in an island, and it's like a question if you use it like an Excel table format or really build some database. From other side, it seems to be something which is different from different countries. There are obviously need for knowledge about technology, knowledge and capacity. So it's not possible to have trained people in every places. And also cultural things, what we learned from Pacific, that culture of country is pretty different, and we don't understand each other, and that we don't know how to work well. Then, of course, it's not enough money. You can't buy like big architectures for many million euros for a country where the population is only less than 100,000. Again, challenge. Quite often some donors are working together just to help, but then it's still something to think about. And then last, we saw quite interesting things. Interesting, difficult to say interesting, but it's like a tsunamis and weather disasters. So it's a question how you can protect your data and your systems when every 4 years everything is out and no electricity and no databases anymore. So this has been one of those list of those things we were just wondering, and I'm very happy to ask Nicolai to give some experience from Faroe Islands, and then we just continue with a little bit more deep technology view. Please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Arvo, for introducing me, and thank you, the E-Governance Academy, for inviting me here to tell you about the journey that we in the Faroe Islands has had in regards of digitalization for the last 5 years. Yes, I am the manager of this national digitalization program called Untitled Chapter, which in English would be Digital Faroe Islands. Is it working? Yes, Digital Faroe Islands. And the purpose of this program is to build a national infrastructure here in the Faroe Islands. And we have been, it's been an honor for us to come here to Estonia a couple of times. The first time in 2014. Estonia has been a very large inspirational source for us. And it's important, as Arvo already said, that we as a small country adapt and copy things from other successful nations that have been successful in digitalization. So we are very happy to have had the opportunity to have Estonia as one of our close cooperation countries. I'd like to start to tell you a little bit about my country, because I guess many of you don't know that much about the Faroe Islands. Somebody maybe sometimes mix it with something that belongs to Egypt. It's not the Faroe Islands, it's the Faroe Islands. But if you look at the world map, it's very seldom that you can see it in the first glimpse with the eye. You have to zoom in. You have to zoom a lot in. So in between Iceland, Scotland, and Norway, we are situated. And our land area is 1,400 square kilometers, and the population is 51,000. It's not 50,000, it's 51,000. It's very important. And if you compare to Estonia, they usually say that they are a small country, but they are more than 35 times the size of the population of the Faroe Islands. So if they are small, we are smaller than small, so maybe a micro or a nano country or whatever you would call those kind of countries. But still, a country that is based on the welfare, the Nordic welfare model with all the services that you would expect from a country like that. So it also gives a lot of complexity and requirements for the government to make sure that these services are available for the citizens. But we, the Faroe Islands, we're a self-governing nation under the Kingdom of Denmark. We have had our own parliament for nearly 1,000 years. I think we usually brag that this is one of the oldest parliament in Europe. We have our own language and flag, and this is the parliament, this is the flag, and legislation, and are also independent regarding of customs and tax. And we're not a member of the EU. Denmark, which is a part of EU, and it makes things complicated in many ways. And we are a fairly well digitalized country, I would say. The level of digitalization is pretty high. We have, if we ask our telcos, they say we have a world-class telecom infrastructure. We have broadband for every citizen, and we have 4G coverage on all populated and almost every unpopulated areas as well. And 5G is scheduled here in the near future, already next year. And if you look at the IT infrastructure, in public and private sector, it's pretty well developed as well. I can mention a few examples. We have a nationwide tax collection system, which collects taxes from both the public and private sector. It's a very efficient system. And we have a centralized governmental financial system that takes care of all the financial management for all the governmental bodies. This is also a very efficient financial management system. And we have a nationwide healthcare system which means that I, as a citizen, when I am a patient, I have one patient record wherever I travel in the healthcare system. So these are just examples of where we have succeeded in regards of digitalization. But which challenge do we have in the Faroe Islands? If you look at the big picture, of course, we are small and isolated. That gives us the natural challenges that comes with that you don't have the scale necessary for doing large investments. And in the Faroe Islands, we have a very monolithic economy. We're very dependent on fisheries, which makes us very vulnerable when it comes to if the fish goes away. And in 2014, when we started this journey, we had an IT industry that was stagnated. There wasn't much investment from either the public or private side in IT and digitalization. We had at the same time also a decrease in population. Many young people are traveling abroad for education, and many of them didn't come back. And we have this wide age gap. The population is getting older, like you see in most Western European countries. And as I said, young people moving also. So these are the challenges we met, and the government at that time decided that one of the drivers for meeting these challenges should be digitalization. And what the motivation was that they wanted to achieve, which benefits they wanted to achieve in this investment was these bullets that I put on the wall here. One of them, the things was the increased welfare. We wanted to move from bureaucracy to welfare and more efficient services. We wanted to modernize our society so it became more attractive to live and work in. We wanted to promote the trade, especially the IT industry. We wanted to diversify our economy so we weren't so dependent on the fishery anymore. And we wanted to promote immigration, so have people move back to highly skilled people that earlier maybe couldn't find jobs that they were demanding on our islands, to create jobs for highly skilled people. And of course, we want to improve efficiency. Maybe that's not on the top of the list because we are so small. The gains aren't that big in efficiency matters. And there was also a point in strengthening the democracy by putting all data available for citizens and for businesses. We wanted to improve the trust in the government and also giving the opportunity to develop solutions that could strengthen democracy. Well, it ended up we wanted to build a national digital infrastructure. That was the first thing we started to do and are doing at the moment. And those of you that have been visiting Estonia before probably know this picture. At least we are very inspired by the Estonians in this sense. And there are 4 elements that we are building. So we are building an infrastructure for all the society to develop e-services upon. There is the EID, which we are developing at the moment and will deliver later this year. This will be compliant to the EIDAS regulation, which means that we in the future also could do cross-border services. A citizen in the Faroe Islands can access services in other EU countries in the future. We're developing a citizen portal where we expose all the data from public service institutions, service providers, and where we would like them to offer all their services upon also. This will also be ready later this year at the same time as we're offering the EID. The third pillar, which we built here in this digital infrastructure, is what we call basic data. This again consists of some sub elements. The main purpose here is to make sure that these data are as freely and openly accessible for all stakeholders in the society to use. Information about people, about businesses, about ownership data and geo data. And fourth, and not least, we have the X-road, or which we call it in Faroe Islands, Helden, which is like literally in the center of digitalization. This gives us, we were very inspired by this way of thinking, this distributed, decentralized way of thinking, where you don't put all your eggs in one basket, where that's not so vulnerable a structure, where you standardize the way you communicate and you make it in a secure manner. So this is also the center of our digitalization here in the Faroe Islands. Last, I'd like to say a little bit about the lessons learned. We were very aware of that now, since we're building an infrastructure for all the society, not just for the public sector, but for the private sector and the citizen as well. We were very aware of the cooperation between all major stakeholders. So when we implemented, for example, the X-road in Faroe Islands, we did it in a very close relationship with the IT industry. They are the ones that are going to build the security service and build the web services in the future. So you have to have them on board when implementing X-road. It was also from start a decision from our government that this should be a public-private partnership. So we are funded both by private sector and also municipalities as well as government. So this has also strengthened the engagement and commitment from these stakeholders, and we meet a lot of requirements and demands for them as well. And promoting the program on a regular basis on media and social media as well is very important for the trust for the citizens for the program. And the constant involvement of relevant stakeholders is also a very important issue to have their voice and have their saying in this project. And last but not least, Being a late adapter is something that we as a small company, as a country, need to do, where we could not be first movers, and we need to learn and copy and steal, if you'd like to say, from others that have done these things before. So that will be my first words.
Thank you. Please. Okay, it's a very good example that and it's important to learn from those countries who are doing all the spectrum of everything which big countries are doing also, because our number of services doesn't matter too much, you are big or small, and you always live thinking that most probably the small countries have more easy organization and legislation. People know each other, but from other side also much more like integration with private sector, because you don't have enough customers and return of investment is a problem. No. And this is a little bit in line with when we are thinking about some regional cooperation as well, and then it was leading some technology discussions we started already some time ago. So I think that maybe this kind of good example from Faroe can input to this bigger picture, and then we just look it together some of the examples. Please, Arne from Cybernetica, working long time with this X-row type of solutions, big architectures, and also technologies, please.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Yeah, small countries. So I will kind of like try to start from very basic things, what we need to do. We want to have governmental information systems integrated with each other, exchanging data fluently. We want to automate the processes, make it secure. We have registries that keeps the basic data. We have document management, we have accounting, we have geographical information systems, lots of different systems that all must work together. We want to offer e-services to citizens, makes their life easier, make it easy to be a good citizen, to pay taxes, etc. We want to offer them modern approaches like apps, so that they can do everything on their mobile phone, not to turn on the computer, perhaps they don't even have a computer, organize all the payments, whatever they need to do in a secure and convenient way. So what we need to do is, because everything that we kind of like talk is based on something, and this is a very, very similar things and similar needs. Doesn't matter what system or application or whatever it is. We need to host the servers somewhere. We need the networks to connect all the systems. We need certificates for everything. We need certificates for citizens. We need certificates for organizations, for computers. We need electronic identity or mobile identity. We need a secure way how citizens can interact with government. We need a structured way how to connect organizations, how to exchange the data, portals for offering access. We need some custom-made software. And we need security. I wrote cybersecurity here, but you should think about it as a wider. I mean, like it's also policies, how we secure our systems, how we build up the secure systems, how we monitor, how we react to incidents, etc. We need this in order to offer a sustainable service or build a sustainable e-government system. So it's a lot of things that are needed. And it's not just technology. I mean, like it's not just those particular building blocks, but you need a personnel. You need a qualified people who know how to configure, how to run the systems. Sometimes you need a separation of roles, which means that you need extra people just to make the system secure, just to comply with your policies. You need redundancy. I mean, you need not just one data center, but perhaps several data centers located away from each other in order to deal with natural disasters. You need a way how to the there is also issue of, let's say, amortization or systems that you build today. They are probably good for 5, 10 years. If they are good for 15 years, then it's already great achievement from the original developers. So you must renew your things, all those things. And at the same time, you want to stay in control. I mean, like, as an independent nation, you want to have a control over your systems, your infrastructure, etc. So those are really contradicting requirements, I would say. And you need some little bit different thinking, perhaps, in order to satisfy those. And you definitely cannot leave out some pieces. I mean, like, it's, yeah, pretty much all that I described earlier, it's needed if you want to build a complete e-government. So what are your solutions, or what you can do in order to solve this problem or this contradiction? There are several. First of all, you should use efficient solutions. I mean, like, there is no excuse in using inefficient technology that is really hard to run, maintain, etc. I've given some examples here. What I mean, like, the data exchange products that Cybernetica is developing, it's really fast to set up and it's really easy to operate in a secure manner. So this will cut down your costs on personnel. It will make it much easier to establish some of those capabilities. Next thing is outsourcing. There are some things that are it's very common that you don't do it on your own, like hosting, data centers. And this is a great opportunity, actually, how to share costs with other organizations, perhaps not just with public ones, but also with the private organizations. Networking almost exclusively is a kind of like something that you outsource. You don't build your own networks. PKI is also something that is very often outsourced, because for machine certificates, we rely very much on existing commercial international certification authorities. If you talk about certificates that are needed for citizens, then the picture is a little bit different. But you should really think about it. Perhaps this is also something that you can outsource. Then sharing the systems with private sector. I mean, this is really important. And if we think what we have done correctly in Estonia, I think this is one of the things that the basic infrastructure that government has built is shared with private sector, and actually private sector is sometimes using it even more. And I think this is the same thing that Nicolai told us about Faroe Islands, that you should look at the society as a whole and not just try to deal with the public sector alone, because then it's going to be very inefficient and costly in the long run. Yeah, and we really have some good examples, like the smart ID systems that we have in Estonia that is really born from the private sector and is used also by the public sector. And finally, you also have option of international cooperation. And this is something that we don't see very much in the field of e-government, but I think that it has a potential. So instead of trying to build your own PKI, if you decide to do it, or your own data exchange platform, perhaps you can do it with your neighbors and share some of the costs to get this redundancy that is needed more easier in a kind of like a natural way. So this is definitely one of the underutilized solutions. And if you try to apply those solutions to your problems, you have several questions that still need answer. First of all, is it still secure? Is it secure? Is it do I retain enough authority over my information systems and over my infrastructure? And this is something that is not easy question to answer. And it needs some some policy planning, it needs a good contracts, it needs a trust towards your neighbors with whom you would like to work, or towards your outsourcing suppliers. You should resolve the rules for cooperation, what standards and protocols to use that are comfortable for all the participants. It applies both to public, private direction and also for the international direction. And also vendor lock-in. I mean, like, sometimes it's very easy to fall into a situation where it's really hard to change some supplier, and you should think about it before. So I think that one of the important things, if you have a very limited resources, and I'm just not talking about money, but mostly about people, is that you should, one thing that you should definitely retain is a competence to be a smart buyer or smart customer, so that you know what you need, under which conditions you want to buy some service or some technology, or under which conditions you want to do some cooperation, and then you can organize it in a more sustainable way. So, but I think that if you kind of like have this kind of like a power and knowledge to make a good decisions, then organizing cooperation and open up more and share this infrastructure that is in many cases deemed kind of like a critical with our neighbors. I think this is a way how very small nations could build e-government in a meaningful way. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we had now like a small overview about some good examples and some ideas, and also what was like my thinking was that quite often also we can see that the neighbors are not so best friends with each other. So it might be also some political question, and if you are trusting to keep your data or your part of your system in your neighbor countries, so it might be some this type of discussion as well, non-technical things. But I think that now we have some time for questions, and of course I can start from my question, and then if you haven't listed already questions, not yet.
Oh, there's one.
But I will ask my question because it was asked from me from one country, that how many technology people you need in your country if you have 100,000 people? Is it 10 or 100? Of course, and some countries doesn't have anybody or one person. Do you have some opinion about that?
Well, in the Faroe Islands, we have done some comparison and see it in the OECD index, comparing to other countries we'd like to compare ourselves with. And when we started this program, we were a little bit below what you expect in the IT industry. That they made an assessment and were finding out how many people were working in the IT industry. And at the moment, at that time, I think there were 600 people on different levels of technical support and technical level. Huh? So I think now it's been growing also because of the program. So there's not enough, but it's getting better. It's growing, and it is a problem that we don't have enough. They are very highly skilled and highly educated, most of them, in the IT vendors that we use. But there are not enough, and therefore we need to cooperate also and not build that much in-house. We need to buy components that are already been built, and the task for our local vendors then becomes to make sure that these work together and are able to maintain them in the future also.
Yes, and it's a question about education as well, how much you can train those people locally and how much you rely on international help.
Yes, yeah, and in that case, we have a university which also has, you can take a bachelor degree in computer science, but if you want to do other different kinds of educations, you have to to leave abroad, and we are luckily considered like since we are part of the Danish kingdom, are considered Danish citizens, we are allowed to apply for universities, and many of the young people do, to Danish university, and are able to be part of this university on the same as like everybody else in Denmark. So
And maybe also some more philosophic consideration is that if you have good technology and knowledgeable people in a country, the infrastructure is in place, and some people are starting to come back. So good experts who can just run business also virtually or not being in locally.
Yeah, of course, yeah. That's also happening, maybe not on a big scale, but that's also happening, yeah, in our islands, yeah.
Okay.
There is a question from the audience, and it is addressed at Arne. So a member of the audience asks, could you take the questions that you posed or the issues that you discussed and talk about them from Cybernetica point of view, from your business point of view?
Wow, interesting question.
Isn't it?
What questions were those?
Your questions?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Can you show the questions? Because or slides and yeah.
Can we please put on the Cybernetica's slides one more time?
The last.
The slides that we used for Arne's press. Okay. You can maybe just skip to the questions.
Yeah, right.
The last one.
Yeah, it was just last slide.
Last slide, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think the first one is the hardest, because security is a always relative thing, and you must analyze what are your threats and what kind of protection can you have against those threats. So I think that perhaps some examples are good here. And I would give you an example from Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. And we have this smart ID authentication service, which is EID and authentication and digital signature. And it started as a completely commercial, private technology, but it's accredited right now. It has a status of qualified signature creation device, so it can be accepted by the governments, or it should be, because it has a sufficient status, and it can be used across 3 Baltic states. Estonian Tax and Customs Board just launched a new system for authentication, for user rights management, etc., and it supports Smart ID. So today, Latvian, Lithuanian citizens can log into tax board systems and kind of like lodge share declarations without any extra arrangements. So basically, electronic identity, this is considered in most cases something that is very critical for the national security. So many countries have a different, let's say, limitations. Where should the EID provider operate? Where should the data kept? Where is the certification authority, etc. And now we have kind of like a naturally grown system that is cross borders, secure, and accepted by the government. So the point is that you shouldn't take for granted that something is insecure because nobody has ever operated in this way. You should really look at the details and understand what's the threat, what will happen if this system is compromised, for example. How to organize the cooperation? Yeah, those are hard questions. I think that first of all there must be will. When I wrote about the cooperation, I was really thinking about this international cooperation, because what happens inside the country, cooperation between public and private sector, it's kind of like a natural. I think it happens everywhere to a certain extent, and I think that private companies are always happy to do more cooperation, to offer more services, and it's usually just governmental policies that avoid it. But with international cooperation, it definitely requires will from all sides to do this and see the value. And I think it should be balanced. And those perhaps even technical controls that will make sure that all parties' interests are protected. So you should think about those from the very beginning. Yeah. Vendor lock-in is interesting, and to some extent why I presented this stack of core things that you need, like hosting and network and PKI and etc., is to show that you should try to build your system kind of like a neutral. If you need a server room, it doesn't mean that you need to get all the other services from the same provider, but rather you should have a separate contracts, separate arrangements for different layers, and it will give you more maneuvering room. And also, in some cases, alternatives are important, but you should always have in mind that it should be viable economically as well. So you cannot afford too many alternatives if you try to do everything by yourself. So with international cooperation, it will be more efficient. So I hope there are more questions.
There are.
Oh, super.
Thank you, Arne, for this. I hope that the answer was satisfactory to the asker, and also I think the point of view that a corporate representative reminds governments to avoid vendor lock-in is a very generous way of approaching this thing. Thank you very much. I have a question now to the representative of the Faroe Islands. There's a question about, thinking about data sovereignty and all the challenges that small countries have. The asker is saying, would Faroe Islands be considering a total cloud approach, providing that it has a reliable internet infrastructure? Meaning you do have the infrastructure there. Would you consider keeping everything in a cloud somewhere away from your island, at someone else's servers? Thank you very much.
Well, at the moment, the question is easy to answer. The answer is no, and that's different reasons. One of them is our isolated situation, and also from a governmental side, these things that we are developing is considered like critical infrastructure, like water supply or electricity supply. So this is an EID and the X-Road and the citizen portal are considered like to be critical infrastructure. So therefore, from governmental side, it's decided that this should be placed on our islands. At least the most critical parts. You can take smaller parts and which are not that critical and put it in the cloud. But to start with, all of the infrastructure is placed on our islands. So, and the purpose is also that we would like to have the IT industry to have an opportunity to grow, to maintain this, and have a competitive edge in other directions also in abroad in the future also.
Great. I wonder if Arvo, from the point of view of consultancy, and maybe Arne from the point of view of business, would agree with that or not.
I would say that yes, this is happening. It seems that, of course, it's like a question how much you trust like your vendors and everything like that, but it's a tendency at the moment that some critical things can be just backupped somewhere, and some ability to control all your own environment should remain, at least for this critical part of information systems. But let's see, it's probably a question of discussions. I think that 10 years ago everybody were very optimistic about cloud. Now everybody are very optimistic about the blockchain. And let's see what's next year. Yeah. But yes, more questions from audience maybe?
No. Yes, there is now. Faroe Islands. I'm just reading out from here. Faroe Islands. Which were the biggest challenges in terms of legislative aspects in implementing the X-Roads? What kind of laws did you have to change, and was it easy or hard? And are you, because you are positioned as LG of Denmark, LG being what? I don't know. You are positioned as LG of Denmark.
Local government.
Local government. I guess local government of Denmark. So implementation of the solution was not made as typical country-based solutions. So you...
I would...
okay, we'll try to put this... but anyway, could you tell us what were the biggest challenges in handling the legal part? The technology part we already talked about, but the legal part, and whether if you were a full-fledged sovereign country, as opposed to being some still, legally speaking, part of Denmark, would that have made any difference?
Yeah, in this sense, we are independent. Very small parts of our responsibilities are still in Danish hands, but in this sense, we are.
So in this case, you could actually, another country
have,
that is UN member state separately, etc., could actually just simply copy your example. You're not in any way different.
No, and regarding the legal aspects, we decided from start to have to make an act regarding the X-road, that every public institutions that want to exchange data have to run it through the X-road. So today it's mandatory for every public institutions to use the X-road, at least for all new integration that has been done, and they have a timeline for migrating all the old solutions. So besides that, I don't think there have been so many legal aspects, because when you talk about exchanging data between for example, the citizen registry to the hospital, it's a case between these two parties. It's nothing to do with us as the developer of the X-road.
Okay, thank you, and I'm just very happy for this discussion. And our plan is just to use experience from some countries. We have already longer cooperation, have some good plans about international cooperation, and maybe also discuss some possibilities to do it in a regional level, somewhere maybe in Pacific or in Caribbean and in Indian Ocean. So this is my comment, and very much happy also to give you a small token from our side. Please.
Okay. Thank you.